The San Francisco 49ers might have their new defensive coordinator just become available. Jim Schwartz not getting the job as head coach with the Cleveland Browns. He's unhappy. He said goodbye to the organization. Will he say hello to San Francisco and Santa Clara on today's Locked On 49ers?
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock at Coach Crocky. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Love our everydayers. Thanks for hanging with us, and thanks for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. We're going to talk defensive coordinator for the 49ers. Gus Bradley still out there. Kyle Shanahan, I think, still in Cabo on vacation right now. Raheem Morris, maybe. The name's been floated out there. Some good stories about Kyle Shanahan and Raheem Morris in the past have come to light recently. But Jim Schwartz now, the name that we are going to talk about most on today's program, today's episode of Locked On 49ers, brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. All right, Croc, first, before we get into the nitty-gritty, what kind of scheme Jim Schwartz runs, if he is actually a good fit for the San Francisco 49ers, stylistically, personnel-wise, let's talk about why Jim Schwartz now might suddenly be available to interview for the defensive coordinator job with Kyle Shanahan for the 49ers. And we got to go to Tom Pelissero for this one because so first of all, Jim Schwartz, and we talked about it here on the podcast before, he was my #1 target for the San Francisco 49ers to go after. A little bit of an older coach. He's been around, one of the top defensive coordinators in the NFL, has had one of the top units really for over a decade when he's a defensive coordinator, and would be a player that, or would be a coach that maybe Kyle Shanahan could put a ring on the finger of somebody that to like be his Vic Fangio, an older coach, his Steve Spagnuolo, like Andy Reid has, where you have this older coach who's a really good coordinator who's probably not going to leave for a head coach job, even if he might get interviews, which Spags does sometimes. He never gets a head coach job. And I feel like Jim Schwartz is hitting the part of his career where, he's 60 years old. Teams want to hire all these young hotshot guys and especially offensive guys. So older defensive coaches, you might settle into just, okay, you are a defensive coordinator from here on out and a darn good one. That would be a really nice fit for Kyle Shanahan to have a guy that can be a defense coordinator and one of the best in the league for a long time and not have to now 5 in a row, right? This is 5 straight different defense coordinators for the 49ers. So to not have to go through that dance again. Sorry. I really want your opinions on this one, Croc. Really quick. This is why he might be available, because the Cleveland Browns have hired former Baltimore Ravens offensive coordinator as their head coach. And according to Tom Pelissero, after the Browns informed
Todd Monken?
Todd Monken, yes, sorry. Todd Monken is the new head coach of the Cleveland Browns. And in fact, he was the offensive coordinator in Cleveland in 2019 in the Freddie Kitchens era that didn't last very long, by the way. It was very similar to the Tom Sula era here for the Cleveland Browns there. And so anyway, he gets the head coach job. So clearly they don't like what was happening on offense. They want to change the offense. And I think the Browns were hoping, and Todd Monken reportedly was cool with Schwartz staying as defensive coordinator. Schwartz not cool with that, apparently. After the Browns informed defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz this morning they were passing him over to hire Todd Monken as head coach, Schwartz was visibly upset, said goodbyes in the building, and told other coaches he's not coming back. Schwartz now under contract still in Cleveland. They want to retain him, but his future is unclear, and he clearly wants out and has said his goodbyes. Tom Pelissero goes on to say the 49ers, among others, would likely have interest in Jim Schwartz if and when he becomes available. Schwartz was in the Browns facility the past couple of days in anticipation of being named head coach, but he'd already told people that if he were passed over, he wasn't staying. And you know what really Kyle Shanahan and Jim Schwartz could bond over is being a coordinator in Cleveland and wanting the heck out. Because that happened to Kyle Shanahan, right? And he said, I don't want to be here anymore. I want to get the heck out of here. And they let him out of his contract. He ended up going to, I believe that was when he went straight from Cleveland to the Atlanta Falcons to be off.
Well, hold on. They let him out, but not before. I believe it was Mike McDaniel who wrote like a 10-page essay on why the Browns should let he and Kyle Shanahan out of their contracts.
Yes. Yeah. You definitely want to let Mike McDaniel write your letter for him. So maybe Jim Schwartz needs to call Mike McDaniel and employ him just for a day to write him a nice little letter to try to get out of that. The Browns are a weird organization.
Here's my question about that, right? With the 49ers coming up there. Are the 49ers coming up because Tom Pelissero believes that the 49ers are truly interested in looking into him, and maybe that's something you heard? Or is he saying, well, 49ers have a defensive coordinating vacancy, so it only makes sense for them to look into a guy like Schwartz and potentially hire him?
That is unclear, and I have not heard Tom Pelissero go into any more detail about that. But it was interesting that was the one team name he put out there. So either it's one of those two things. Either he just connects the dots and say, well, he's a good coach. They have an opening. They should probably call a good coach, right? And so maybe Tom Pelissero's in the same place we are, where it's like, well, this is obvious. You got to call Jim Schwartz to see if you can get him if you can't. Or maybe he's hearing more like he knows that the 49ers would be very interested, would be calling, and he would be at the top of their list, which he should be if he were to become available. So that's where we're at right now. And I don't know exactly. There's been a real lack of anything with the 49ers defensive coordinator interviews and stuff. Last we heard, it was just Kyle Shanahan saying that Gus Bradley's in the building and he's the internal candidate if they were to go internal. But he said there's some other things they have to do. And then, as far as I know, he went off to vacation. And I don't know how much, if he's had phone calls, if he's had informal interviews, if he's done Zoom call interviews with guys while he's on vacation, if he's still on vacation, I don't know. So it seems like it's in a holding pattern, and the 49ers aren't too worried about hurrying up and hiring somebody because they have a guy, they know what their floor is at defensive coordinator potentially, and that's Gus Bradley. So Jim Schwartz, what are your initial thoughts just hearing Jim Schwartz, and do you think he would be somebody that the 49ers should go out and get, or would you prefer a Raheem Morris or a Gus Bradley? And I don't know if we really need to mention any other candidates other than those three names for the San Francisco 49ers. By the way, did you hear the story this week that came out that is, I guess it's been out there for a while. I believe it was in Mike Silver's book. And when they were both low level, because remember, Kyle Shanahan rolled out of college and got a quality control job with John Gruden's Tampa Bay Bucks. And so he's been buddies with Raheem Morris for a long time because Raheem Morris was an assistant as well on those Bucks defenses under Monty Kiffin for a long time ago. And apparently they were out one night late, and I believe it was at the combine in Indianapolis, and cops just went and tackled Raheem Morris when they were walking down the street, like at 2 or 3 in the morning or something like this. And Kyle Shanahan was like beside himself. He was irate, and he was defending Raheem Morris and like, what are you guys doing? Demanding badge numbers and sticking up for his guy. They end up both getting arrested. No charges were filed. I don't believe there's any apologies either, but essentially they just spent the night in jail, and he was like public intox or something for Kyle Shanahan, and let him out. And that was that. And so Kyle Shanahan was like, I think there was I wish I had the quote in front of me. I don't have it, but Kyle Shanahan said something to effect when asked about it later by reporters. He was like, it's never been more worth it to spend a night in jail than to stick up for my guy, basically, is what he has said. So good on Kyle Shanahan for sticking up for his buddy Raheem Morris. So we know they're tight and they go way back. So I could see Raheem Morris being someone the 49ers would think about bringing in. And obviously, that was under Monty Kiffin. So Raheem Morris, we know, ran more, they drafted 2 sort of stand-up style rushers in the draft last year. The Atlanta Falcons did so, and they ran more of an odd front with the Rams, and he kind of inherited some scheme from what's his name, who was with the Niners for a year. Who was the Rams defensive coordinator? Former head coach for the Chargers as well.
Brandon
Staley. There you go. Yeah, Brandon Staley.
Brandon Staley.
Yeah. So Raheem Morris has run a lot of different schemes. But anyway, Croc, what do you think? We're talking Morris, we're talking Jim Schwartz, and we're talking Gus Bradley. And I don't think we should be talking about anybody else.
Well, you started to ask me, what's the first thing that comes to mind when I think of Jim Schwartz and what I think about him? And the first thing that comes to mind is clearly Jim Harbaugh running across the field, slapping his hand, slapping him on the back, and then trotting off the field without any regard for Jim Schwartz, who was irate, used the word irate with Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah.
Who was irate. And trying to get to Jim Harbaugh, and Jim Harbaugh just running off like, like good win 40.
Just pushing him out of the way like he was a fan off the street getting in his way. That was hilarious. Classic moment. One of the great moments. Yeah, I don't know if Jim Schwartz holds that against the 49ers organization or not, but man, that was an all-timer.
So, yeah, aside from that being funny, a very challenging defense. And Brian Flores was a guy I brought up, a week or so ago when we first found out about the Robert Saleh news. And when I think of Jim Schwartz, I kind of put him in that mold of guys who I think they do their things a little different. They're not just going to sit back there, be still. They're going to play some man coverage. They're going to roll coverage. They're going to do a lot of different things. But like you said, play a high percentage of man coverage. And I think for Cleveland Browns team, who just have not had a quarterback for several years, and they tried to give one guy $230 million guaranteed. We saw how that backfired on them. But regardless of the circumstances, their defense performed very well without an offense that can move the ball. And I thought that was very consistent under Jim Schwartz. And we saw how he gave Kyle Shanahan fits. Now, if we go back to Kyle Shanahan the first time, looking for his defensive coordinator, and he was looking for kind of the Gus Bradley and Robert Saleh. He ended up interviewing and getting it, but it was a defense that he felt like was extremely challenging for him to beat. So he's like, I need a guy that is going to coach that scheme, and obviously it has morphed into something a little different now. But I wonder if he goes that same route with Jim Schwartz. And we know, famously, I've always said Kyle Shanahan, he's the defensive coordinator. Well, maybe now he kind of is the defensive coordinator, but hire somebody to run their defense and is actually the defensive coordinator. So Jim Schwartz, it seems far-fetched because we don't see any other connections outside of Kyle just, being difficult or having a difficult time against his defenses. But I think that could be something that the 49ers definitely are interested in if Kyle just lets go and says, I want to get a guy that I have struggles against.
There's one more connection with Jim Schwartz, his defense, and the San Francisco 49ers and their current defense and the way they run things. And then there's something that is very different about the way the 49ers have run things under Robert Saleh on defense and Jim Schwartz's scheme. So let's talk scheme, let's talk fit, and let's talk personnel. Do the 49ers have the right personnel to run Jim Schwartz's scheme on defense? Next. This episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by Rocket Money. Let's be real. Managing your finances can be overwhelming between subscriptions you forgot about, bills that keep going up, and trying to figure out where all your money actually goes each month. It's easy to feel like you're losing control, and who has time to track every transaction or hunt down hidden fees? That's where Rocket Money comes in, the personal finance app that helps you take control. It finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. Sometimes it's shocking when you see Rocket Money show you how much you're paying for different subscriptions, stuff you completely forgot about, stuff that maybe just pops once a year and you don't really think about it, and you don't notice it, and all of a sudden it's like, man, I've been paying for something for 3 years that I never used, that I thought was canceled a long time ago. Can save you a ton of money monthly and annually. So let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join at rocketmoney.com/lockedon. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever just to hand things off and move on with your day. Yeah, it is tax season. Always NFL off season. It's like, oh yeah, it's also tax season. Got to get your taxes done before the NFL draft, right? With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and work to get you every deduction. And for a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. if a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year. Just file by February 28th. So take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local. That's TurboTax.com. That's TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today.
Hey, Peacock, this is totally off subject, but I got the Lakers game on right now. It's the Lakers versus Cleveland. And who and guys in that are watching this, you guys can answer this as well if you have suggestions. Who is the NFL's version of Luka Doncic? And I'm not saying just from a standpoint of him being great, right? Luka, he's balling right now. He has like 21 points. They're not even halfway through the third quarter. So he's doing his thing. He's averaging an astronomical number of points every game. But I don't know how he does it. Like, he's like very slow, but somehow he picks his spots and he gets there and he kind of leans and bumps and he just knows how to get his shot off and get to his spots like over and over and over again. And then stuff just works. I don't know how, but who is the NFL's version of that guy? Where it's like, how does this guy just keep winning? How does he? It could be a pass rusher. It could be a receiver, like a running back. Like, how is he doing it?
I feel like it's got to be a receiver. The name that comes to mind is
he just hit another jump shot.
The name that comes to mind is Puka Nacua, because
that's crazy. That's the first person that came to mind for me too. I swear.
Yeah. Just because it's not height, weight, speed necessarily. It's savvy. It's knowing where you are. It's being in the right spot. It's pulling down tough catches, and it's not. I think maybe Keenan Allen would have been a guy I would have named before. Would be that style of guy who's just kind of always open and fills up the stat sheet, but he doesn't blow you away from a height, weight, speed perspective. And yeah, that's interesting. It's just you. It's like we talk about a lot. It's like track speed versus football speed, right? It's like being an athlete or being a football player. He's just a hooper.
I'll tell you a really good one. I think it's even better than Puka Nacua.
Okay.
Anquan Bolden.
Anquan Bolden's another one.
Especially late in his career when he was with the 49ers. Like, how is he going for 1,000 yards a season?
Yeah. I mean, I guess the OG of that, the most extreme example is Jerry Rice.
Yeah, but he on paper, but he played much faster and played. Yeah, like Anquan was actually slow.
Right. Yeah. I'll never forget the story.
I'm saying, like Luka, when I'm watching him, it's not like he tested poorly but then you watch him and all of a sudden he's doing all these miraculous things. He plays just at like one pace. There's no real change of pace to anything that he does. And it would just be like a pass rusher that just, you see him get off the ball, but he doesn't have bend. It doesn't have any bend, but it's like, wow, why does he have 20 sacks?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a few other names that popped in my head, but it's fascinating, man. Just you need to find ballers, man. You just got to find players.
Yeah, find ballers.
Jim Schwartz, Croc. So here's the connection. Is the reason the 49ers have the scheme they have is because Kyle Shanahan hated playing against Jim Schwartz defenses and hated playing against Pete Carroll coverages. So he put the two together. So what the 49ers do run is what Jim Schwartz is famous for up front, which is the wide nine defense. And Chris Kuceric learned the wide nine defense. I don't know if he was on the staff. I think he was on the staff with as assistant defensive line coach with Jim Schwartz. And I believe it was Jim Washburn was the defensive line coach. And so there is a lineage there from Chris Kuceric from Jim Schwartz, I believe in the Detroit days when Schwartz was head coach. I think their paths crossed over and Kuceric worked under him, but I know he worked under the idea of the wide nine and brought that to San Francisco for the 49ers. So they already run the wide nine front and they run that defensive front. Now so that would be a very easy thing and a very similar thing and be good news for Nick Bosa and what the 49ers have going on the defensive line. The big difference, though, and I'll bring a graphical representation here for those of you watching on YouTube, the big difference is coverage. And Jim Schwartz runs more man coverage than any team in the NFL. And the 49ers were bottom 10, I think, in man coverage. So they run mostly zone, and obviously it came from that cover 3 lineage, but then they've added a lot more cover 4, cover 6, and have changed up the coverage. So it's not just your stock cover 3 that they used to run in the Seattle days. And I'll bring that up on the screen right now. And Croc, you can see this is for the 2025 season through week 17. So no weirdness of week 18 and people sitting and resting their starters and all that stuff. The Browns ran 37% cover 1 man coverage. That was their staple defense. And it was the highest man coverage in the league. So about 40%, a little over 40% man coverage for the Cleveland Browns this year. Number 1 in the NFL. The 49ers were a lot more cover 3 zone, cover 4, some cover 6 in there, and then a little bit of cover 1 man. And then when the Browns went to zone, they did run some cover 3. So there is some crossover, but definitely a lot more man than zone under Jim Schwartz, a lot more zone than man for Robert Saleh, but a lot of single high for both. And that begs the question, do the 49ers have the personnel to run that scheme? And is Kyle Shanahan willing to allow a defensive coach to come in and run his scheme, and it would definitely change things up on the back
end? I think most cornerbacks coming out of college right now have the ability to play man coverage. And I think a lot of them have to be molded to more of a zone style defense and learn exactly what these, learn more what these defensive coordinators at the NFL are looking for from a zone perspective. So man coverage, I don't think is an issue. If you want to run more man coverage, I bet, Renardo Green, who ran a ton of man coverage at Florida State, would welcome that. He'd probably prefer that. Please bring in somebody like Schwartz so I can get out of these zones, playing off, building, doing all these things. Let me get in the guy's face like I did Malik Neighbors and how I would work in Malik Neighbors all game, right? Like he did a terrific job against him, like he did against Ricky Pearsall. Did a hell of a job defending Ricky Pearsall for a game. Like he was on these guys like white on rice and was very, very, very competitive throughout routes. So that was him doing man. Then he gets to the NFL and you see the zone numbers. 49ers are running a ton of zone. And then, getting cooked a little bit, not anything too crazy, but why is he going to be? Oh, that's a bad pick. It's like, well, put me in man coverage and see how I do. So I think a lot of the 49ers defensive backs, I would love, we hear the hyena and how he talks about wanting to follow guys and shadow guys. Then we heard Robert Saleh's response to that. Like, well, you do that when we're playing zone, and then now it changes everybody else's responsibility and all that. And just play man. And let's see Lenoir lock some stuff up. See Green lock some stuff up. I would love to see the 49ers and man. And they got a scrappy slot corner in Stout, who I don't think he would mind playing man either. So, let's not stop there. 49ers got some linebackers that are super athletic, whether it's Fred Warner or D Winters. Those guys I don't think would mind playing man in space against running back. So I think the 49ers could double their percentage of running man and would not have any issues.
Let's talk more about that. I've got the PFF grades and some man coverage statistics for the 49ers defenders in 2025 when they are in man coverage and what that might look like. And I think it needs to be a little bit of a conversation here about what the 49ers goals should be, because we do know that when you're playing a lot of man coverage, it helps to have a really good pass rush. And one player who is not coming over from Cleveland with Jim Schwartz, if he were to become defense coordinator, is Myles Garrett. Let's get into that now. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers brought to you by Indeed. If you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper, it wasn't the right fit after all, you know how important that is when you want candidates that truly match what you are looking for. Trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Hiring? Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed's sponsored jobs puts your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. Instead of struggling, get your post seen. Indeed sponsored jobs helps your listing stand out and reach quality candidates faster. It's so important to get to those candidates faster. You can spend more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. And according to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed are 90% more likely to report a hire than non-sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show get $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. And there's nothing like going to a game live, going to see a concert, going to an NBA arena, the crowd, the energy, the moment. Getting tickets, though, that part hasn't always been so simple. That's why Gametime has become the go-to app for scoring tickets fast. I've used it a ton to get basketball tickets, to go to baseball games, to go to a ton of concerts without the hassle. It puts the advantage back where it belongs with the fans. And love seeing the all-in prices up front. No surprise fees at checkout is my favorite feature, being able to view the seat before you buy. So you know you're making the right decision and you know what kind of seat you're going to get. And you can get some phenomenal last-minute deals for sports, concerts, comedy shows, you name it, at Gametime. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. That's code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. And remember, it's gametime.co, not .com. Travis Kelce. That's the Luka. Right? Travis Kelce.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, I can see
Especially
that.
later career Travis Kelce. Still getting open, still count on him on third down to convert.
Were you thinking about that while doing the ad?
No, that came up when you were talking before the ad break, and I was like, oh, of course, Travis Kelce is the guy. And tight end, there's a lot of tight end translation to the game of basketball anyway, so that just makes sense.
Yeah.
Jim Schwartz defense, a lot of man coverage. Okay, well, do the 49ers have guys that can play man? And some people popped up, I was talking about this earlier today on Twitter. Some people said, you know what? Not only do the 49ers have some corners that can play man, that might be better for Renardo Green. To your point, Croc. Renardo Green might be better in Jim Schwartz's scheme than he was running Robert Saleh's scheme. We saw him getting an earful because he didn't do the rules correctly and didn't have enough depth on a cover 2 call, and he was covering grass instead of covering a man. And I know a wise man once told me that zone coverage becomes man coverage at some point because you're covering people, you're not covering patches of grass when you're playing football. And so I think that might be overblown, the personnel side of things, just because the 49ers have run so much zone. I think they might be pretty good, man. I don't know if the grades necessarily bear that out that I'm looking at from Pro Football Focus right now, but Jamador Lenore, Upton Stout, you're just talking about the top 3 corners, Lenore, Stout, Renardo Green. I mean, they'd be fine running more man, basically twice as much man as they run right now.
Yeah. And I would like to see them, what would it look like if they ran a higher percentage of man, right? But yeah, I think they'd be just fine.
How it's
maybe
taught
you add
too,
one more guy.
I'm sure I think differently and it's taught differently for a different coach.
Yeah.
And they might be when they are playing man, they might be playing man differently than they were under Saleh.
I think one of the bigger things is finding a safety that can also play man, because I think that's the 49ers big Achilles heel right now. Over the last, several years, really since they had Jimmy Ward, what safeties have been comfortable just being able to go down and play man. I think that was one of the things that made Ward special from that standpoint. He can go guard your best receiver in the slot, and that's a very challenging spot right there. And so it just gave the 49ers an added level of versatility that they don't have from certain guys right now.
It's kind of.
Do you remember the game where the 49ers played Jared Goff and he had like 50 yards passing for the entire game? I just remember, Cooper Kupp just getting locked up by Jimmy Ward in the slot.
Oh, we're going back. Yeah. Here's the thing. I'm looking at the numbers right now, and Fred Warner, probably not shockingly, has the best grade on defense in man coverage for the 49ers last year. It was limited. He only had 33 snaps in man coverage. He was targeted one time and did not allow a catch. So that was his season in man coverage. I think there's, and you just kind of talked about it. Like, I think the 49ers were taken advantage of more because they screwed up zone rules, right? On the back end and on defense. And that's what teams, including the Browns, were trying to take advantage of against the 49ers, not necessarily getting guys matched up in man and beating them that way. Now, there might be some range issues that would not translate also to man because of athleticism or whatever. We're talking about, say, Ji'Ayir Brown in the middle of the field. But the next two highest graded defenders, according to Pro Football Focus in man coverage for the 49ers defense, were Malik Mustafa and Ji'Ayir Brown. Surprisingly.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Ji'Ayir Brown in man coverage was only targeted 6 times, allowed 2 catches for 31 yards. Malik Mustafa was targeted more, 11 times. He gave up 8 catches. So his catch percentage is very high, but his grade is good for some reason. So that doesn't really jive that well. He gave up 8 catches for only 52 yards. So we're talking about shorter stuff there with Malik Mustafa in coverage. Renardo Green and Ji'Ayir Brown had the most snaps in man. You would probably think that because they're the outside corners. And Ji'Ayir Brown only a 41.6 grade. He gave up 7 catches on 13 targets for 127 yards and 2 touchdowns and a quarterback rating of 127.2 when targeted. So not great numbers for Ji'Ayir in man coverage last year. Renardo Green, a little better. He had a 52.7 grade according to Pro Football Focus. He was targeted more, 26 times, gave up 10 catches, so only a 38.5% reception percentage when targeting for, 165 yards on 26.
That's a big, that's kind of a big amount of yards on 10. That's essentially what, 16 yards per reception.
Yeah.
But I was thinking, I'm like, if you throw at me 26 times and catch 10, that's not bad. That's not.
It's kind of all or nothing, which is kind of what we saw from Renardo Green last year, I guess, whether it was zone or man.
Yeah. I'd like for the 49ers to put a little bit more emphasis on playing man.
Yeah, I would like it. I don't think it's necessarily worse. I think you can always, it would be short-sighted to say, oh, the 49ers don't have great man corners now, so we can't ever hire this coach and run this type of scheme. If these aren't the right corners, go find the right corners. If you need a safety, go get a safety. That's the way I look at it. But if you're going to run a lot of man coverage, you're going to have to get after the quarterback. And while Jim Schwartz wouldn't bring Myles Garrett with him, unless they were able to swing some kind of a crazy trade, which necessarily wouldn't be against, would very much be very unlikely to happen. But they do have a guy in the next tier of defensive linemen, and that's Nick Bosa. So you do have something to work with there. I would imagine Jim Schwartz might say, yeah, give me another pass rusher, though. I love it.
Definitely.
I mean, there's nothing that dissuades me from what I thought originally about Jim Schwartz. He's the guy.
If you're going to play man coverage, you have to have a pass rush.
Yes.
And that's the whole goal. I tell people all the time, we're going to play man, we're going to play press. And the goal with playing man press is to stay as close to a receiver throughout the route as possible for you to force a tight window / contested throw. And if you're competing at the catch point consistently, I like it. You may be prone to more penalties, though, because naturally corners get a little grabby in man coverage.
And the other part of it is, speaking of pass rush, if he can't get home with his front four, he's going to bring heat. Much more aggressive front. He blitzed top 10 in the NFL in blitz rate. Was Jim Schwartz. 49ers always bottom 10 in blitz rate in the NFL. Here, last note on Jim Schwartz. Here is his track record as a defensive coordinator. The last 10 or so years, he's been a defensive coordinator going back to when he was DC in Buffalo in 2014. His defenses on a scale of EPA per play allowed. Number 4 defense last year in Cleveland. It was middle of the road 18 in 2024. It was the number 1 defense in the NFL in 2023 in Cleveland. Those were his 3 years in Cleveland. Before that, he was in Philly for 5 years. His defenses EPA per play allowed were number 11, number 12, 17, number 4. In 2016, it was number 9. And then in 2014, Buffalo, number 3 defense. So of the last 10 or so years, 5 of his defenses have been top 10 in the NFL, and 4 of those have been top 5 in the league. And he was number 1 in 2023 in Cleveland.
Wow. Yeah,
he's a good coach. I think it would be an awesome hire. I think Raheem Morris would be really good. And I think Gus Bradley, if he was to have a much more diverse set of coverages, much more like Robert Saleh was running, and maybe that's what he was learning when he was here for a year, and maybe even helping himself adjust his own scheme with the 49ers as much as he was helping the 49ers with whatever his role was, which I don't know, but I think he's a good football coach. He's been a head coach. I think he'd be a fine hire. But he would probably have to adapt to what the 49ers were already doing. And you see a lot less just strict cover 3 from him because, again, you start looking at those same numbers. His defenses were 28, 29, 23 in the NFL when Jim Schwartz's were 4, 1, 3, right, in the NFL. So there would have to be some changes with what Gus Bradley was doing, and I think those changes would come, and I think he's a better hire than we saw from Sorensen and Wilkes being forced in there as well. So I think the 49ers would be all right at defensive coordinator. Clearly, Jim Schwartz is the guy if they can get him. Can they get him? Do they want to get him is the question now.
I hope so.
I hope so. We'll find out.
That we mentioned immediately. We mentioned him right away. So
yeah, he was like the number one guy. Like that's what Kyle Shanahan has needed for a while. The older defense coordinator that's one of the top DCs in the NFL. So you can forget about defense. Let that guy go to work and he can focus.
But real quick, you started off by saying he wanted the head coaching job. So he still has this thought of, I kind of want to be a head coach. And that, you kind of want to get away from that a little bit.
I'm sure he'll take interviews. But again, like Steve Spagnuolo is the perfect example with Andy Reid. Steve Spagnuolo gets like 1 or 2 head coach interviews every offseason. He never gets the job, though. But he still gets those interviews. And so I would think it would probably be similar with Jim Schwartz. He'll be just a name on the list. But is he going to be at the top of people's wish lists to hire? Probably not, and at least have a guy that could be there for a couple of years, and who knows, maybe the next 10 years. Let us know what you think at BD Peacock, at Coach Crocky. Comment on YouTube, subscribe while you're there, and Croc and I will be back tomorrow right here. Locked On 49ers.